Good afternoon. Welcome to Rotary District 5300 monthly webinar. Today we are focused on artificial intelligence. I am joined by the public image co-chairs, Zeb Welborn and Roy Berry. My name is Amy Vandermark, and we oversee public image for District 5300. They are going to take it away with a great conversation of practical use cases, security, privacy, and ethical usage. So, gentlemen, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, I will get started. I'm going to give you guys and gals an introduction. I am Roy Barry. I'm a lawyer and a member of the Rotary Club of Upland. My office is located in downtown Upland, and I've been a member of Rotary since 2007. I'm a past president of my club, and I'm also a past assistant governor. I'm currently the area governor for Area 5, which covers Covina, West Covina, Industry Hills. And I serve on the Public Image Committee, as Amy said. I served together with Zeb Welborn, Amy Vandermark, Karen Lujan, and Chino Reyes. In this portion of the presentation, I'm going to go through some of the history of AI, and then I'm going to pass it on to Zeb, who is going to cover some of the practical issues, and I'll come back with some of the ethical, moral, and legal issues that are involved with AI for Rotarians in general. Zeb, do you want to introduce yourself and then we'll go to your portion?
Yeah, hi, my name is Zeb Welborn. I am President and CEO of the Chino Valley Chamber of Commerce. I'm also President and CEO of Welborn Media. We are a digital marketing company, so we do a lot in AI. And as Roy will be talking about some of the work around artificial intelligence and the ethical implications of it, I'll be covering kind of the practical usage of it and go through some hands-on tutorials of how to use AI for Rotary.
As I said, I'm a lawyer. I use AI regularly in my legal practice, and I primarily use a service that's known as Protege from LexisNexis. And it's an AI that works in what's called a closed environment, which means it's highly secure and works within the confines of the LexisNexis service. It draws on a large database of case laws, statutes, treatises, and other secondary sources in its library. It's something that I use as a lawyer, but as I will discuss later on, it's not a panacea for anybody. If you are not a lawyer and you draw upon resources from something like Protege or any other resource that you're not familiar with, you run the risk of potentially drawing incorrect conclusions, making assessments that you're not well informed about, not understanding what the information is that gets returned to you. I also use ChatGPT for non-legal issues. And just as an idea of what you get, what you pay for, you can pay $20 a month or get it free, or you could pay $200 a month for an enterprise version. Or if you go for the service that I use as a lawyer, you pay about $350 a month. So anyway, in terms of what AI means to us as Rotarians, the simple answer is that it can make us more productive, more efficient, and it can streamline our research and generally help us in our work to be good Rotarians and fulfilling the concepts of service above self. The key question to keep in mind is, what do we use AI for, and is it aligned with the Rotarian values, the values of Rotary being service above self and the four-way test? In that regard, I ask you to consider what ethics means. Oftentimes, we think of ethics as simply being a good person, doing things which are just and moral. I also like to consider ethics, though, as a definition of being something that is aligned with what your work is in life. I went through the research of Britannica and Merriam-Webster, and they both give definitions in addition to being a good moral person. The concept of ethics as being the principles of conduct that govern an individual or the profession that the individual is in, and as well as being applied to the concepts of being a good and moral person. So what that means to us as Rotarians is, how does the four-way test operate as an ethical compass? And I like to look at AI as a Rotarian, keeping in mind that when we work with it, we want to maintain the concepts of the four-way test being, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? As I said, AI is not a panacea. It is a tool. We need to learn how to use it. And in that context, I think it's important to have some understanding of the history and the different options that are available for AI and what AI is in general. Keep in mind that AI is basically a simulation of human intelligence. It's not actually intelligent. It doesn't have sentience. Some people have said that they believe it has sentience. There's been no conclusion that it actually does, sentience being the concept of a person or a thing having its own self-awareness. It is basically a very highly evolved computer program that returns information based upon its best guesses, which are based upon, in turn, probability. The probabilities that come back are based upon human feedback and fine-tuning by humans. Machines learn this information based upon repeated training, which means information that goes in and then information that is returned to it. However, keep in mind that the output that you get from AI whenever you use it is only as good as the input that's gone into it. There's that classic phrase, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have a good data source, you're not going to get good results. So you always need to consider when you're inputting data into an AI, if you're asking it, for example, to assess things like employment applications or medical reports, or in a case where we're working in a community assessment project, what is the source of your data? Have you sourced it from reliable information? Is your data old? Have you updated it? Otherwise, you're going to be getting skewed results. The concept of AI has been around for quite a while. However, it's only been recently brought into the concept of the legal system. There are a few definitions that have come out in recent years, actually only within the past year for some of them. There were civil code definitions that have come into place in recent years. Civil Code 3110 defines artificial intelligence in general as engineered or machine-based systems that vary in its level of autonomy and that can, for explicit or implicit objectives, infer from the input it receives how to generate outputs that can influence physical or virtual environments. Then there's the distinction between the general concept of AI and generative AI, and that's what we frequently consider ChatGPT or Claude to be. Those are generative AI systems. They return information, generate images, text, graphics, maybe audio based upon the requests that have been put in via text-based systems. Recently, the Business and Profession Code was updated effective January 1st, 2026, essentially mirroring that same definition and requiring a level of disclosure that anybody who is effectively maintaining websites or creates code that involves the creation of AI, that it provides a tool for anybody using that site to determine whether or not the video, the audio, etc., has been created via AI. And that's essentially to prevent things like deep fakes and misinformation from coming out and distorting truth. So there are a few different types of AI. There's predictive, there's generative, there's agentic, which deals with automation, and then there are subfields of AI, such as natural language processing, and those are items such as Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, speech recognition. And then there's explainable AI, which is designed for transparency. As you know, oftentimes AI will return a response to a question, and you have really no idea how it came to that conclusion. The reason is that AI has gotten so complex. There are so many, literally trillions of parameters that are involved with the resolution of a question from an AI system that it's just about impossible to decipher how the AI came to that conclusion. There are some systems that are being developed that will return what's called transparency or explainable AI. That's still being worked upon, but there are some systems that are in place that are beginning to provide explanations for how AI came up with its conclusions. There are different levels of AI. There's machine learning. That's still considered AI. That's essentially training the model to return information and return information that makes sense. There's been many times when AIs have returned information that's just completely nonsense. The process of machine learning and deep learning is that process of actually training the AI to return information that's actually usable. And then towards the bottom of the hierarchy are what we call large language modules. Those are items such as ChatGPT, which is probably the most common and popular large language module today. There's also a system called Claude. You may have heard of that. There's Llama, which is brought by Meta, which is the Facebook, um, uh, which runs Facebook, and then you've got Gemini, Sonnet, and Mistral. Those are all called large language modules, meaning they take the input that you give it in a prompt and they return information in a conversational context. There are three different levels of AI. There is what we have today, which is known as narrow AI. That's the systems that we have in place today. They're basically advanced conversationalists. They are ChatGPT based researched. They are essentially taking the information that's out there and reassembling it to provide an answer to your questions or a response to your prompts. There is next level strong AI, which is still under development. It's really theoretical at this point. The concept is that it would be AI systems that can actually think, understand, and reason. That's still theoretical at best, maybe decades away. And then there's what is known as super AI, which is theoretically smarter than humans. And that's what brought up the concerns that you've heard so much about, that AI could take over the world, that you're going to end up with a Skynet problem. I want to focus more along the lines of what are the realities, what are the realistic concerns that people have with AI, as opposed to this fear that AI is going to somehow develop into a Skynet type entity and take over. Keep in mind that AI is made up by humans. It's ultimately controlled by humans. It doesn't take the initiative. It takes already existing information and it reassembles it. There are built-in controls right now for AI systems such as ChatGPT and Claude. There's censorship. You can't ask it to create information that's violent or contrary to anything that's moral, essentially. So there are protections that are built in. The realistic concerns are these days hallucinations. You may have heard of that, which is basically the AI making up information. There's the potential for misuse. And then, as I'll get into later on, issues concerning bias, misinformation, disinformation, deep fakes, security issues, and this overall concern with a lack of transparency or a black box. So I think at this point, I wanted to turn it over um, to Zeb to go into some of the practical issues. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to deal with some of the more Rotary-centered concerns. And then from there, we'll take some questions. Zeb, do you want to move on?
Yeah, sounds great. I am going to share my screen and go from there. So what I wanted to go over with you all was I think the best way for me to talk about, like I give when for social media first came out, is I would speak a lot on social media. Social media at that time was very new, and there was a lot of variance in terms of people and their understanding of what the tool was. So a lot of people, like some of them did it professionally, some of them had a business and had never used it before and were like hesitant to use it at all. AI is kind of in the same space where there's so many people that use it on a daily basis, some people that use it sporadically, some people that use it all the time, and some people that use it professionally. So I thought of the best way that I could use it is kind of solicit your feedback. I want to show you some tools. So my goal with showing you this AI work is I want to show you a couple of things. As one, I'm hoping I can introduce you to something that maybe you didn't know that you could use AI to do before. I'm going to walk through some case study examples of how we can use it inside of Rotary. And then I'm going to give you some prompts so that we can actually kind of like experiment a little bit with some of these tools before. So I'm going to start out by giving you a prompt and two prompts, and I want you to add this in the Q&A section as we're putting this together. So prompt number one is how often do you use AI? So if you wouldn't mind putting that in the questions section for those of you that are listening. And then number two, I want you to, we're gonna use a little bit of AI. So I want you to come up with a person, a place, or a thing. Roy and Amy, I want you to do this too. So come up with a person, place, or thing, and write it in the Q&A section, and then we're gonna experiment a little bit with that. So as you guys are answering that or putting those things in the Q&A, what I think I'd like to do is show you a little case study example of how we use AI to put this presentation together and also to give some case study examples. So here's a way that I use. So everything that you're going to see here was all kind of AI generated, but it's also with input from me. So I think what happens sometimes is if you haven't used AI or if you're feeling kind of reluctant to use AI, which I've had a lot of chats with the Rotarians where this is what they'll tell me is I've used it, but it didn't give me what I wanted. It didn't give me the output that I was looking for, and so it's kind of not helpful for me. So that's a lot of the feedback that I get when you put it in. But really, the way to get that feedback and the input you want is by iterating. So like if it doesn't give you what you want, you can also re-prompt it to give it what you want, and by giving it more information. So I'm going to give you an example of how we set this up. Very simply, I put in, and actually I want to show you a couple of different tools that ChatGPT has. So I'm going to show you some ChatGPT features. That's what I use mostly. I'm going to walk through a couple of other AI tools along the way, but I predominantly use ChatGPT. So what you're going to see is some things here. Now there are different ways that the AI, that ChatGPT gets its information. So I'm going to cover a couple of those things. So if you look down here where it says ask anything, there's a little plus button down there. If you hit that plus button, it'll give you some prompts here, which we'll see here. So what you have here is you can add photos and files. So you can add pictures and visuals or whatever you want in there, and it can use that and source data from that. It has this deep research button, and that's what I use for this one. So I'm going to walk you through that, an example of what deep research looks like. You can create an image. I'm going to show an example of what an agent can do. And then this other one says use connectors. So you can actually connect your Google Drive. So if you wanted to search through your Google Drive or you wanted to search through your, what are the other tools there? It's like, it's Google Drive, it's the OneDrive, it's the, oh, there we go. The Google Drive, the OneDrive, SharePoint, but there's also all sorts of other apps that will connect to this. So you can source data from those things that you use. And then the other things is you can study and learn, you can do some web searches, and you can use their Canvas tool. And I haven't used most of those, so I'm going to walk through the other things here. So deep research, that's what I use for this one. Now what deep research will do is it will do like really deep online research for what you want to do. So in this case, I put in, this was the prompt, said I am giving a presentation for Rotary District 5300 on artificial intelligence, effective use of AI in Rotary. Can you create a presentation that highlights best practices and some creative ideas to use AI for Rotary clubs in Rotary District 5300? So that was the prompt that I gave. And then it comes back with a couple of questions to seek some clarity. So the questions it has are like, what is the target audience? What is the expected length of the presentation? Do they want me to create a slide deck, or would you like to add talking and scripting points? And then are there anything specific that you would want to focus on? So I answered those questions very simply on what I feel like I would like to share, which is like, yeah, give me all of that information. So I went through and had that piece together. It's pieces of information together. So what it does, this is a 22-page document that it put together. It's all text-based, so I don't expect you to be reading this while we're talking. I'm just using this to show you what it looks like. But it comes through and it walks through like, here's what I would put together for this presentation. Now for me, like Roy already shared the AI, what it is, what it does. So I didn't really want to cover that. What I wanted to cover was maybe some practical ways that we can use AI in Rotary. So why would we use it? One is to save time, work smarter, not harder. You can enhance your communication outreach because you can cater messages to people. You can do more of it. You can use data. So if you're ever doing any surveys with your members, or surveys with people. You can get information back, and then you can use AI to tell you what that information means and how you can use it practically. And then you can think innovatively to revolve impact. So those are some examples. And then I'm going to talk to you about how best to use it. So like it says, these are typical advice, right? You use it as an assistant. It's somebody that's there to help you. It's not there to take the place for you. So like if I were to do this presentation and not show you what we're doing, I would edit this drastically to highlight the things that I feel like is important during this presentation. So you can treat it as an AI. You can verify and refine output. So that's what I talked about by making sure that if you're not getting the input, the information that you want, you just reiterate and do it again. You got to be careful of privacy and sending out, private information. So if you have anything in your files or anything that you want to keep private, don't put that through ChatGPT. And then educate and share. So from a public image standpoint, and that's what we do, like it will help you with creating tons of information. I think when I first started doing my social media marketing, it's like you're creating social media posts, you're creating emails, you're creating content for your website, you're creating all these things. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's really hard to put those things together. You want to craft it, make it sound really well. Now you can just kind of like throw up your thoughts into this platform and it'll make you sound nice. It'll put it together. It'll sound good. I'd always recommend editing it after you put it in there, but you can use it for content creation, for graphic design. You can put a chat bot on your website where it basically like reviews all of your website. So if a Rotarian or potential Rotarian comes to your website, they can ask it a question. It'll respond right away with information that's on your website. And if you have people from different areas, they have language translation tools. You can use AI to translate things from a public image standpoint. From a club administration or operations standpoint, it will help you take minutes. It will help you plan your events. It will help you make better decisions by using data analysis tools. It'll help with donor and member engagement. So you can use it to outreach to donors to think of strategies on how to do it, how to craft an email for a donor. And then it will help streamline your administrative tasks. So anything that you feel like is kind of routine that you do all the time, there's very easy tools where I'll give you an example is through the chamber, a new member signs up and I send out an email right away that says, hey, thank you for joining. I'd love to learn more about your business and how you do it. But I always have to go in and manually kind of respond to that. You can use AI tools to not manually respond to that. You just kind of add the same thing and it will respond automatically with the stuff that I would normally spend where I'd have to manually input it and do it in. AI for service projects and community impact. So one of the things that I think you could use is say this AI use in Rotary is that deep research tool. So Roy, which Rotary Club are you in, Roy?
Upland.
Upland. So just you could type in like what are the needs in Upland? What are the public service needs of Upland? What is a project that Rotary can do? You could type that into deep research. It will scour the internet, come up with some options for you to say what are some gaps that are missing that Rotary members could fill in when it comes to what are the needs of the community. So it can assess community needs. It can brainstorm ideas. So we're doing, and I'm going to showcase this case study. We're doing our 100th year anniversary for the Chino Rotary Club. So that's a case study that I use with deep research. It's like, let's plan this whole thing out. You plan the whole thing from start to finish. Give me all the stuff that I need. And then I have this full blueprint on something where it would take like, dozens of committee meetings to come together to plan this event. Now we have the full blueprint. It's ready to go. And I just send it out to the group. It can help you with project planning. It can help you measure your impact. One of the things that we do at the chamber is we've done a lot of really good work, but it's tough to tell like what that impact is. So I'll plug that into ChatGPT, like what is the economic impact of the work that we did? And it will output and it will give justification for why it said it did what it was going to do. And so we got a $1 million grant to do some funds in the Chino Valley area. The economic impact of that was substantially larger than what that investment was. So I'm able to use that when I'm going to seek more funding for the work that we do and saying like, hey, with this funds, we did X, we 10X the work that we did in our community. And it makes it easier for people to want to invest and get involved in the work that you do. And then again, you can use it as to connect with global partners from across the globe and you can communicate in ways that you probably weren't able to do pre-AI. You can use it for member engagement and training. So you can do these personalized communications where you can email people and use you can use their language and tone when you're responding back to them. If you have any like personalized information about them, you can kind of highlight things that are important to them, and then you can kind of give feedback to who they are and what they do. So like, for example, if when a new member joins, they fill out a bio about them, you can copy and paste that bio. You can put it into ChatGPT when you're responding to an email, and then it will include some of that information from their bio, so that's directly communicating with them, their likes and their interests of things that they're passionate about. We already talked about the chat bots. You can use it for training and education. So I guess that's as an example of using that, where I'm kind of chat GBTing stuff and sending it back. And then you can get feedback, which we talked about before too. When it comes to like, if you're ever doing any stuff for your foundation, so you can do tons of fundraising opportunities, you can prospect for donors. So you can ask AI, what are the top 10 donors in this region and what do they care about? You can do some grant proposal and writing through the chamber. It would take us about I guess it depends. If we did a grant proposal, depending on the grant, it's usually like weeks worth of work. And it's just focusing on the grant writing portion of it. With AI, it takes that week's worth of work, and we can complete grants that used to take us 3 to 4 weeks in about a day or two. So it's totally drastically streamlines those days down, because you can use it to brainstorm about what you want to try to do, and then you can refine the language so you don't have to be accurate all the time, and make sure that everything has proper grammar and is spelled correctly. You can get all your ideas out, you can ask it to spit things back, and then you're kind of iterating back and forth. So when we do grants, I don't just like submit it, ChatGPT comes up with something, and then I leave it. I will rewrite it. I'll go through it once and I'll send it back to ChatGPT. Like, what do you think about these? And it's like a way to communicate about grant writing that we didn't have the ability to do before. You can personalize your outreach. You can personalize messages. You can analyze your campaigns, how well they're doing. And then if you're ever doing any kind of reporting, this makes it super easy. You can just highlight all the stuff that you did. You can sit in there, create a nice, clean report for the work that we do. AI at the district level. You can get strategic insights about your members, about the whole district, about Rotary International. We have tons of data through DACDBE and a bunch of other resources. I don't know if we're leveraging those as good as we can, but if you throw in some of that data into ChatGPT, it will give you some very good information about what are some strategies or advice that we have to help use those insights to create a more strategic direction for the district or for clubs. You can use it for your communications. You can use it for training and resources. And then how to be innovative in your leadership. Here's some examples of some Rotary clubs and how others have used it. So you can use it for design if you're doing, and I'm going to show you an example of this in a minute, but you can use it if you're having events, you're having any programs, you can run your work through this design feature and you can get some of your stuff designed. I think some clubs, I've been to some, where they sing at their Rotary clubs. Our club doesn't sing, but I know that a lot of other clubs do. So if you wanted to write a song about Rotary in the style of Let It Go from the Disney song or whatever it is, you can put it in there and it will write a song that has Rotary themed all throughout it, and it's in the style and tone of Let It Go from Frozen. So there's lots of ways that you can leverage that to get creative and do cool things. One of the things, so don't tell anybody about this, but we are doing our 100th year anniversary. So we have a member who's been he had perfect attendance for 55 years before COVID happened. And then so he would still love to be involved, but just with COVID, it wasn't possible to do that. But he had 55 years of perfect attendance. So this 100th year anniversary, we're going to create an AI image of him, like what he looked like if he were around when Rotary first started in Chino Valley and the 100 years ago, as kind of a joke to say that he's been a Rotarian for a long, long time here in the Chino Valley, and we can use AI to put together some unique photos and visuals that aren't real, but that would get a laugh out of the people that are there for sure. You can use it to recap all of your meetings. You can ask it anything. So if you wanted to, get information about Rotary, or what is Rotary, or what do we do, or why do we do it, you can easily throw that into ChatGPT, and it'll give you some great tips and advice on that front. Roy handled all the stuff around that. So I'm going to shift over to the chat real quick. So I asked for a couple of things, which is, so somebody said I use 5 to 7 times a day. Good, Chino. Grace uses it regularly. Awesome. Now you guys were supposed to put a person, place, or thing in the Q&A section. So if we did that, I don't have that there.
So your panelists are having a little issue. We can't add to the Q&A. We can answer questions, but we can't pose a question. So I'll give you a person, place, or thing. Jim Carrey, Paris, France, ice cream cone.
All right, let's do it. So I'll go back to the screen here, and let's do this. So I want to show you some of the tools and things that you can use through ChatGPT. So on the left-hand side here, you will see that there's ways to do different creations. There's a new chat. You can search your chats. You have a library of chats. If you ever do any coding, this will help you with coding for websites, the codex. Sora is one that you can use for videos and you can use for images. So I'm going to do that. Can you create a video of Jim Carrey in Paris eating an ice cream cone? Did I get that right?
Yes, indeed.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to create a video that's going to have Jim Carrey eating ice cream and a thing. So it takes a little bit of time to do that. So while that is loading, I'm going to go back and finish the last portion of what I wanted to show you. So this is all, what I just showed you was all the deep research tool. It went through and did that on its own. I thought the best way to show you is just like how I could do it. Now, what I've done in previous presentations is I'll ask it to create an actual slide for a PowerPoint presentation. And I'll say, create a slide that uses this and put it in the PowerPoint presentation. If I don't like the slide, I'll just say, hey, rewrite it or make it look different, or I'll tell it what I want it to do. Now, I mentioned that we have our 100th year anniversary that's coming up. So this was a prompt that we used, and I wanted to show you how you could use it to really just create a really strong game plan for anything that you have coming up. So I said, hey, I want to create this game plan for a 100-year anniversary. Here's all the information I know about it so far. We literally just had our first planning meeting on Tuesday last week. Or was it this week? Yeah, this has been a long week. So on Tuesday this week, we had our first planning meeting, and we just asked it, here's what I want you to do. I want you to plan this event. I want you to make it successful. I want you to, here's all the details that I know about it. And so I put in all our notes from our first meeting. And then it prompted me with a couple of questions. What are you looking to do? Here's how to do it. I talked about the pricing. I talked about the dress code. I talked about the AV visual. I talked about what we wanted to have in terms of programming. And then it gave me like this full fleshed out blueprint. It's a long document, so when it comes out, like, I would not send this to the committee, but for me, I read through the whole thing and then I could turn it into a one pager that just says, all right, here's our game plan. Here's where to go. If you want to, we can put this into an Excel spreadsheet or some kind of way to track how we're progressing with all the directives and stuff. So it gives me the full marketing plan. It gives me the full outreach plan. It gives me everything to involve and get guided in. And then I'm going to show you a couple other things that comes out of it. So let's go back to so anyways, that's just a way that you can use it. And so I think that's when we're talking about planning or brainstorming or strategizing or the stuff that we do as Rotarians, we have our full-time jobs, most of us. And then we're doing the Rotary stuff in a volunteer capacity. This just allows us to be a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. So, oh, here it is. Here's our video. This is Jim Carrey eating an ice cream cone in Paris. So you can have videos that show up. Now, you want to say that that's Jim Carrey, say, but it does look like him a little bit. You clearly have the Eiffel Tower in the background, and you got the ice cream cone. So literally anything you want to create, if you're creating any kind of promo videos for an event or anything you have, you can create videos. There's also images you can create from that. So there's I think that's just a cool reflective way on how to show how to use Rotary. And then the last thing I'll show you is there's two different additional tools that I use that have heavy AI influences. So one of them is Opus Clip. So Opus Clip, like what I will do after this presentation, I will upload this whole video. I'll put it into Opus. And then what Opus will do is it will cut all of the videos we have into very small segments. So like if you're watching TikToks or you're watching YouTube Shorts or you're watching Instagram Reels, they're really short clips, and those are the ones that are getting most engagement. Like most people today, most of the youth are not going to sit and watch this webinar presentation for an hour. But what they will do is they will get tips and clips from the 20 to 30 seconds about what we're doing, and it really formats in a way. And I'll show you an example of that. Like I just got this, so I haven't used it much, but I'll show you an example of one video. So this was an event that we did. It was called Innovate and Inspire through the Chamber. We had 100 entrepreneurs and CEOs that were there. And then we had the winner of last year's Big Brother who came and spoke. She's actually just started the amazing race, but it cuts these clips down. In this case, it was 1 minute and 37 seconds, and it kind of cut the highlights of it. So instead of watching the full, I think it was 3 hours of panel discussions that we had, you can watch this 1 minute 37 clip, and it actually pinpoints the ones that are kind of like the most impactful. So let me just show you. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but this is what it looks like.
Not feeling fully ready stop me from taking that leap. So when
So it cuts it down into like the most, and the point that she's making is probably the most profound of that whole event, and then it cuts it out. And I was trying this other thing. We have this owl, so the audio, the visual is not as good as it could be, like as if I were just recording her. But you get the point that it cuts it down into small bite-sized things without me having to go in and actually physically edit it. And if you've ever edited videos, you know that that takes forever. And then the last thing that I'll show you is I talked about that 100-year anniversary. Canva now has the ability to create graphics and flyers and things like that. So I wouldn't say the text is like perfect. So if you read it, there's a lot of typos, a lot of imagery, but it will give you ideas on how to create compelling visuals, how to create compelling content. So what I took was all of the information that we would want to market our 100-year anniversary. I plugged it into Canva, and then Canva created some design options for us this is in a matter of seconds. So instead of having a professional designer come in and design your flyer, you can just take a look and you can see these very quick snapshots of some examples of flyers, and then we can edit it from there. So those are the kind of the nuts and bolts of what I would show and how to use artificial intelligence. The one thing that I will share is this is new for everybody. Everybody uses it in their kind of own unique way. And what I would love it for those of you that are on the call with us, by sharing how you use it, is really going to have the most impactful things about the people that are attending or watching this on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube or you're watching this currently, share one example of a way that you've used AI to help you in either your business, your professional, your personal life. And I would love to see that, because I think that that's where you're going to get the most benefit from other people who are also using AI and using it in unique ways. And you can use it for a million different things. These are just some of the ways that you can use them in Rotary. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Roy. Roy, I'll let you take it off, and then we'll open up for Q&A at the end.
All right, thanks, Zeb. All right, I'm gonna go back to screen sharing. And okay, so few of the main issues that you need to be concerned with whenever you use AI, and I'm talking about inputs and outputs and evaluating the responses that you get back. There are three main issues that come up. First, privacy and security concerns. Keep in mind that there's the risk that any of the inputs that you put into AI could become public. So if you're putting in information that just pertains to, event planning or looking for recommendations, maybe to go out for dinner, of course, that's the thing to be concerned with, but you don't want to input anything that has to do with private issues, financial matters, maybe photos that you don't want to have shared, any details that are personal that you don't want to have become public. There are a variety of settings that are available on some of the systems, but there's never a guarantee. I'll go into it a little bit later, but ChatGPT currently is under a court order that they have to maintain all of their records right now, everything, including the deleted chats, everything that they've ever had, essentially since I think it goes back to 2022. because of an existing lawsuit that the New York Times filed against them concerning copyright violations. I'll go into that a little bit more in a few minutes. Then there's the issue of copyright, like I was just saying. Always be careful about what you put in and what you take out. Generally speaking, if you're using ChatGPT to generate images, it's got built-in controls, so it's not going to generate an image of a logo. It's not going to pull Rotary logos off of the RA website. I thought maybe if I went in and I logged in, it would notice that I was logged in and it would be able to take a Rotary logo and embed it into a program for me, but it won't even do that. What it'll do is if you're generating something like a PowerPoint like this program and you want to use some RI logos, it could leave open a blank space that you can insert the logo in later, but it will not access any copyrighted material and return it to you. And then there's the issue of deep fakes and misinformation. We've all heard about that, I believe. Be aware that deep fakes are becoming better and better. It's becoming more and more difficult to identify them, although they are still identifiable. And there are some telltale signs that I'll get into in a few minutes. And okay, so when you look at the use of AI effectively through the lens of a Rotarian, I broke it down into 4 categories, the 4-way test, and pigeonholed the issues I was just discussing into those 4-way test principles. When you talk about whether or not something is the truth, consider deepfakes, consider hallucinations. There's what's called a black box issue, which is anything that goes into AI, you know what's going in. It comes out, it gives you an answer. Maybe you're asking a question about, who knows, history or recommendations for some kind of difficult problem. The reality is, because of the complexity of the system, there's no real way that even the most advanced mathematicians can actually tell you how it came up with the result. There are literally trillions of neural connections and parameters that the AI goes through. At least that's with respect to ChatGPT 5 now, which is the latest iteration of ChatGPT, somewhere between 1.7 and 1.8 trillion connections, parameters. And just so you have an idea, parameter is basically a weighted value, because every informational piece of information that you put into ChatGPT is essentially, like anything else you put into a computer, a series of ones and zeros. And the system evaluates those ones and zeros in terms of probabilities and weighted averages to come up with a response. The network, as they call it, a neural network, has gotten so convoluted that actually tracing where the results came from in any request for information or inquiry to ChatGPT or any of the chatbots is literally impossible at this stage. With respect to whether or not an issue is whether or not AI is fair and to all concerned, consider copyright issues, like I was just saying, consider issues of bias and training, and consider equity issues. And then finally, considering whether or not goodwill will be built by what you do. Always keep that in mind as a Rotarian. And there are issues of privacy to concern yourself with as well. I pigeonhole that into whether or not what you're doing is beneficial. So if you turn to the issue of whether or not something is the truth, there are 2 issues to consider. One is hallucinations. Hallucinations are basically unintentional misinformation that the AI may return. If you ask it a detailed question, maybe it's something about history or politics or even science, and it comes back with an answer that doesn't make any sense, that's because it probably doesn't have the right information in the system to begin with, or it's just lacking in the data, or maybe even a poorly constructed prompt. So be aware of the fact that hallucinations are still a reality and a possibility, although the systems have been getting better and better. The protege system that I use as a lawyer to do my legal research has improved tremendously recently, although I've actually identified a few myself, a few hallucinations. Always go back to the source if you're looking for information. Go back to where the AI obtained its information, and if it doesn't provide that, sometimes you'll get an indication of where it came, where the information came from. Go to another source and double check it. Then there's the issue of deep fakes. These are some of the most famous ones I put up on the slide. The famous Pope in the puffy jacket. Initially, people thought, well, what is the Pope doing in a puffy jacket? Well, it really was a completely deep-faked image. And just to show you that deep fakes and manipulation is nothing new, in the lower right-hand corner, that was an image of President Abraham Lincoln that was manipulated in 1852. The photographer, I think they called him the document printer or the constructor back then, because things were not digital for sure. They took the head of Lincoln and they put it on the body of John Calhoun, allegedly to make him look a little more stately. And people believed it. And it wasn't until sometime in the 20th century that it was discovered that, yeah, that was actually trick photography or a cut and paste job that was done back in the 19th century. Another example of deep fakes is in audio. In 2024, during the presidential campaign, there was a series of audio phone calls that were generated by AI. It sounded like Joe Biden calling people and telling them to stay home and not vote. The campaign person who was involved with that ultimately got, from what I understood, was fined $6 million, essentially trying to sway the results of an election. And with that respect, election laws become an issue to be concerned with in AI. As Rotarians, just bear in mind that you don't want to be advocating for anything political in your organization. But if you are ever called upon to do any type of campaign work outside of Rotary, the rules have changed essentially, or at least caught up to the technology, that any AI generated campaign image, if it's not generated by the actual candidate themselves, is really essentially no longer permitted. If the candidate generates his own AI image, it has to bear the disclaimer that the image or the video was created using AI. I'll skip ahead a little bit here because we're getting a little close in time. I talked about the black box issue. That's, again, in my view, concerning yourself with whether or not something is the truth. We don't really know how the outputs are generated for the most part, so you always need to fact check and double check the information that you get out of the AI. Copyright issues relates to the issue of fair use, and I put on the right-hand side this image. This is a famous image that it's actually a photograph. It's not an AI generated image, but it was a photograph actually taken by this ape back in, I think it was like 2016 or so. And the photographer was out, he was documenting the apes, and the ape actually picked up his camera, he had left it down, took a selfie. Long story short, turns out that guess what? Animals don't own copyright, and this became an entirely public domain image. Um, so except for public domain images or images that you've created, be careful about using anything that is copyrighted. Copyright can be, there's sort of an exception to copyright. That's the concept of fair use. And that depends upon a number of factors that's laid out in the Copyright Act. Depends on what you're using it for, what kind of work was originally sourced, how much you've used, and whether or not the market was impacted by your use of the work. So just bear in mind that fair use can be a defense, but if you're going to use anything that's copyrighted, the general rule is use it for educational or instructive purposes and limit the amount of the use of the copyrighted work. Here's a couple of examples of entirely AI generated art, and two court cases came up. Well, actually, one was actually a copyright denial of a request for copyright protection. Bottom line is AI generated art, if it's entirely generated by an AI, there's no copyright protection in it. If you use the AI to enhance your artwork, then yes, there is some protection to the extent of your contribution to the creation of the image or the video or whatever it is that you're looking to copyright. There are a couple of famous cases. I'm not going to go into them because I want to save a little bit of time for discussion and questions. But there was this Prince case. This will be recorded. You can play this back and take a look at it, but it's a very interesting case about the use of the image of Prince. The photographer that originally took the picture got $400. Later on down the line, the Condé Nast publication entity got $10,000 for reusing that image, actually a number of images, and the photographer was not paid, went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Photographer won and probably got a ton of attorney fees, because if you register your copyright, you're entitled to attorney fees and additional damages. The issue of bias comes up, whether or not something is fair to all concerned. Keep in mind that there are issues with bias in the input that goes in. Like if you're doing so you take a survey of your club's community, make sure you have a good sample, because you're going to be putting information in that the AI is just going to evaluate objectively. It doesn't make any affirmative decisions. It just basically comes back and it returns response to the information that you've given it based upon the prompts that you've prompted the system with. So keep in mind that bias is a serious concern at all times. AI is basically a mirror of our human behaviors. And if we want to be careful not to make decisions that are inequitable or biased, we need to evaluate what goes in and what comes out at all times. Keep in mind that AI is a tool. Like Zeb was saying, it's something you can use and it can help you, but don't rely upon it for things like counseling or therapy or life advice. It's not a personal consultant. It can give you suggestions, it can give you plans, but you're going to have to go back in and reevaluate what it's telling you. Or like Zeb was saying, take a look at what the program is and maybe cut it down and modify it. So it can be a very good starting point to whatever it is that you're trying to do, but don't rely on AI as your therapist. Finally, I wanted to mention the fact that there are issues with privacy when it comes to AI. ChatGPT right now, like I said earlier, is under this court order. They have to preserve all their data, even if you turn off all the controls. For example, there's this toggle switch that allows you to turn off the request to improve the model for everyone. That would prevent the prompts and the information that you receive from going back into the system for training. They have to keep all that data no matter what. That's under court order. A competitor or a close similarity to ChatGPT is Claude AI, and they have a little bit better security protections. Finally, there's DeepSeek. Be aware of that. That is a Chinese-based system. All their data is stored in servers in China, subject to the laws of China, has very limited privacy options. So just be careful if you're going to use DeepSeek. There's also the option of a local AI. You can actually set up your own local AI, and it's something that you can have complete control over, and you can even use it offline. The one that's most popular is a system called Olama. Zeb went over some of the ways that you can use AI for your club. I'm not going to go over that in any more detail. And just keep in mind that AA is powerful. It doesn't generate truth, it generates answers, but you can use it responsibly and it can greatly help you in your club and with everything that you're doing as a Rotarian. But keep in mind to be curious and skeptical and be guided by your ethics. And that's the end of my presentation. Hopefully you have a few minutes for questions.
Absolutely. Roy, Zeb, thank you so much for your contribution today. We do have some great questions that have come through and some practical use cases. So the Rotarian shared with us how they use it. So one of them, Chino, he uses it kind of in my mind, like the best way for public image and communications. He puts in a write-up, an article, and then he asks it, break it apart for the different digital channels that he's going to be using, whether it's going to social media, whether it's being used for email or the actual blog post. So great usage there. And then another Rotarian, she uses it for planning events, framing difficult conversations, responses to difficult conversations, which that sounds fantastic as well. Always a second eye and assistant in helping with those conversations. Great usage there. We had a couple questions. So for these different platforms, these different pieces of software that we use in AI, what versions are you using? So Zeb, I know you shared a few different. Could you list what you shared with us and the versions that you're using?
Yeah, so I'm using the paid version of ChatGPT. So paid version of ChatGPT. Opus is a pay. I think they allow. I think every single one of them will give you the opportunity to kind of trial some of them, or most of them will. So Opus AI is a paid version. I think it's $20 a month or something like that. And then Canva, there is a free version of that I showed you when we were kind of putting that piece together, but they also have a paid version as well. So I think most of these tools, they will have a free version. The paid version will give you a lot more uh, accessibility and resources with them.
Hey, thank you so much. Now, Roy, you went over copyright and giving credit. Now, if we're using AI to create visuals or the copy that we're using, do we need to provide credit anywhere?
If you're using anything that's sourced from original material, you should, but you're in this gray area now, whether or not that's fair use or you are actually creating something that's entirely new. So you have to look at what the output really is. If you're taking a copyrighted work and you're having AI just modify it somewhat, that's probably an improper use. It's probably not a fair use. But if you're taking a small snippet, for example, of a newsreel, or maybe even just a short clip from a movie and you want to integrate that into some AI generated program, that's probably considered fair use, and I wouldn't be concerned with it. You may want to mention in your clip that this is, extracted from a particular film, give some credit to the producer. But generally speaking, it's a gray area. If you're going to do it, go ahead and use it, but keep it limited and give credit to whoever it is that you've taken the information from.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Now, when it comes to these pieces of software, Roy and Zeb, whichever one of you wants to take this, is this software that one would need to download on their desktop computer? Are they downloading apps on their phone? Are these just web versions? What would you recommend?
I'll start with ChatGPT only because, and I say I use ChatGPT. I see a couple of other questions about like what types of things used. There's like Google Gemini and those other ones, and I think just my experience with technology, it's usually those ones that are kind of first to market that do really well, or the ones that have kind of like leveled themselves up or ahead. So I kind of try to stick with those when possible. So ChatGPT is the one that I use on that front. And then I'm sorry, what was the question?
Now, of the software that we've been talking about, AI, are these items that you are going to be downloading to your desktop? Are you downloading them onto your phone, or are you going to a web version?
Yeah, I think they have different options. So like I said, I'll just speak with ChatGPT. I think most of them have some kind of web version, some kind of downloadable version, and then some kind of app with it. So like ChatGPT, for example, I will put it on an app, and I can talk. I can actually like talk to it in my car. So as I'm driving, I'm traveling somewhere, like I will brainstorm with it to think of things that I'm doing. That is an app-based version, but I think most of them are kind of available through your normal internet-provided software, which you would use.
Fantastic. Now, Roy, question for you. Grace asks, I heard you mention that we should not upload personal things. I was told that if you subscribe to a paid plan on ChatGPT, it would be more secure. Where's the truth in that?
Uh, so, no. First of all, because of that existing case, they have to keep everything now, no matter what it is. The best way, if you're going to putting that aside, assuming that case gets resolved and they don't have to keep all the old data any longer, the best way to protect yourself and keep everything private is to not just pay for the $20 version. You have to go all the way up to the $200 enterprise version, and you have to use what's called an API with it. And I believe you actually have to email ChatGPT directly and say, look, I want to make sure that all my conversations are kept private, and then they will actually do that for you. There is the risk anytime you put anything into an AI system, a chatbot, that information has the risk of going out there into the ether and being used, and you don't know how it's going to be used. So I would recommend, no matter what it is, you don't put in anything like bank statements, financial data, social security numbers, kids' medical records, your own medical records. You don't want that going out there unless you're using what's called a local AI. That would be something you actually download onto your computer. You have to have some pretty advanced processors to use it, and then you can actually use your local AI. It's called Olama. I haven't experimented with it. This is just based upon my research. And you could actually be offline, and that AI will do its AI stuff for you locally on your computer. That's really the only way to be 100% certain that you don't lose control over your private data.
Thank you so much, Roy. Well, that concludes it for the questions. I know at my own Rotary Club, we were sitting there one day and we needed to get a 500-word article to a media outlet regarding something, and everyone at the table was a little tapped, and somebody pulled their laptop out, punched up ChatGPT, dumped in some detail information, and out it spurt a 500-word synopsis for us to send over. And we reviewed it, and it made it go that quick, you know? So thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your expertise on the matter. This has been a webinar from District 5300 for Rotary. We hope everyone enjoyed it. Of course, you can see this recording on our YouTube channel, and that will be there in the next few days after Zeb gets done dropping it into that, was it Opus?
Yeah, I
So
think
we'll get that.
in this case, I'm going to send it out via, I'll send you the full video. So we'll get the full video on YouTube, and then we will cut some clips, and I'll send some clips over you to use as you see fit through Rotary District 5300 social media.
And we've got Chino on the line, so he'll be getting those shorts very soon so he can use those on socials. We've gotten a couple more Q&As, and they all say great information. Thank you so much, guys. So we're going to cut it here. I hope everyone has had a great time. And to learn more about Rotary, to learn about public image, to get in on the conversation, make sure you hit the subscribe.